Welcome back to BAS 121. We're on chapter 8. We're looking at profit model. Again, we're going to take our profit model, but we're going to look at what's called a two-way data table. You can follow along in 8. It's example 8.3 in the book. Also, I encourage you can download the Excel spreadsheet, which is on Blackboard, and follow along. I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to play around with this stuff. So what I've done here is a reminder. My assumptions are in gray. And what I'm trying to find or do some sensitivity analysis on is profits, which will be in green. I like to color code my stuff. I'm not sure. That's not a necessity, but it helps me, and hopefully it helps the user understand. So everything in gray is my assumptions, and everything in green is the different profit scenarios. So remember, we're going back to this great model that we built, a profit model. But, often we want to perform, we can change our assumptions and it'll change our profit. We could change this to a different number and it would change our profit, and we can do that. But you don't really see all the scenarios in one place. Now, we've kind of skipped over the one way because I'm jumping straight to the two way, because if you can do the two way, you can do the one way. And most times you're going to want to do a two-way. It's a lot more valuable information. So, here's the model. Let's go through it really quickly. We had unit price as an assumption, and then unit cost, fixed cost we assumed, and we even assumed a demand. We didn't put a demand function in here. Of course, we could. Then the model comes down and it says unit price and an assumed quantity. The quantity sold is the minimum between the assumed quantity produced and the demand, right? We can't, once again, we can't sell more than we produce, and we can't sell more than what we have demand for. So it's a minimum between the quantity demanded and the quantity we produced. And then, of course, our revenues is a very straightforward unit price times the quantity sold gives us our revenue. Then we had an assumption for unit cost, an assumption for unit produced. Our variable costs are just our unit cost times our quantity produced. Fixed cost was an assumption. So our profit is our revenue minus our variable cost minus our fixed cost. So that's great. We've got this wonderful little model over here on the left-hand side where we can change our assumptions here. But let's say the manager or your business said, I'd like to understand on one piece of paper my different profit at different assumptions of unit price and different assumptions of unit cost. Now, once again, we're making a very simplistic assumption here that as the price changes, our quantity demand is not going to change. We'll get into that later. We can change that assumption by changing this to a demand function, which I'll show you in another video. But for now, let's keep it simple. We're saying here's our unit prices, and what I did is I inputted 35, 36, and of course, remember the neat thing in Excel, once you get a pattern, you can just slide it down and it creates them all for you. And then I gave 3 or 4, unit cost, 22, 23, 24, 25. A couple different unit prices, unit costs. So I set that up, and then I said, what I'm trying to find in this model is the profit. Well, what's the profit? The profit is, I just said this is equal to what's in my cell down here that I calculated. Okay? So now that I've got this all set up, I'm going to take all my area, and I'm going to go over to data, and I'm going to say, what if? And I'm not trying to do scenario manager. I'm trying to do, which we're going to skip over. I'm going to go straight to the data table and say, all right, which row am I inputting? Well, my row is my unit cost, and my column is right there. And notice it automatically fills in all of my profit margins for me. All my different scenarios of my profit margins are all filled in for me. I don't think it really matters. So they're all filled in for you. So there, now you can say, all right, where we could look at this and we could say, now the problem with this a little bit, and we'll get into a little more advanced, is not surprising. We maximize our profit where? Well, where the unit costs are minimized and the unit price is maximized. Well, that makes sense because remember, our demand function, we haven't made it change with price. So, we'll get into a little more sophisticated in another video. Thank you. Hope that helps.